Hey there, investors. Today we're going to be talking about all things house hacking. All right. If you don't know, house hacking is how you can get really cheap properties and even live for free using a primary residency loan to buy investment properties. So we'll be going into all of this in this video. We'll be talking about how to purchase them, how to find them, how to hold them long term, different options for them, different types of house hacks, a lot of information. Now, this call is special because it is actually a Zoom call, a recorded Zoom call with me and my partner, Austin Carroll. He's actually a realtor in the Maryland area, and we both go through our advice. He has 68 properties. I have 9, and I actually have multiple house hacks that I not only manage, but also own. So we're really well experienced in this topic. We take these calls, and if you want to have a call with us, a 30-minute recorded Zoom call, then go ahead and message me in the email down below, or you can message me on Instagram. So check out that page also, where I kind of post, regular updates on what I'm doing. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the call and let's talk about house hacks.
So we're current high school seniors. We will be entering college next year as freshmen, and we are looking to purchase a house. We just want to know the logistics going into how to finance such a house and just all around that subject. And also, we're looking specifically in the areas of University of Maryland, which is where I will be attending, and my partner will be attending Towson.
All right. So as you guys know from the channel, Austin's actually a pretty successful realtor out in this area. So most of your financing questions are actually going to be best answered by him. So
cool.
What do you got for him?
Yeah. So number one, props to you guys for getting started early. I thought I was early in buying my first house after college, so kind of cool you guys are looking before college. So a couple things that you're going to want to do. Really, there's two big things when you're buying a house, just logistically for actually buying a house. Forget about house hacks or anything like that. One is you're going to need to show income, and two is you're going to need to have enough cash to purchase the property. So on the income portion of it, with you all being full-time students and not having jobs or tax return history, you would need a cosigner. And basically what that cosigner is doing is saying, hey, I'm going to be on this loan along with Adam, and if Adam doesn't pay it, I'm going to pay it. I'm also responsible. There are some things to think about from the cosigner standpoint, mainly that they're responsible for that debt if they were to go get another loan or something like that. So that's kind of like some of the considerations. So that would be like step one, is figuring out that income piece. If you have that conversation with your parents, it could be another partner or investor or something like that. But that person will also need to have, like, their credit score and stuff will be factored into it. So you'll want to make sure that, you're having a conversation with somebody that has good credit and things like that. And then, you're really going to want to chat with a lender, and I can obviously give you guys some recommendations, but you're going to want to talk pretty in depth with the lender about the logistics of that. So that's piece one. Piece two is the cash. And it sounds like, just talking with you guys a little bit, you'll have some cash to put down on it. But just to kind of like review, you'll either need to have the cash, or your cosigner can have the cash as well. So, if that ends up being a parent or something like that, and they're willing to put a little bit into it, that's, completely reasonable to do. Otherwise, a family member could give a gift for funds. So you could get a gift of funds. So let's just say $5,000 short between what you have in savings and what it's going to cost to purchase the property. You could get a gift from a family member, a direct family member. So that's kind of like logistically how you would look at doing that. And I think it's really smart, because you're going to be, your board that you would already be paying. Number one, hopefully it's going to be really easy for you to find tenants, because it should be your buddies that you're going to meet, or that are going down there, and that can be a stressful process. So that'll be fantastic. And then, the second part of it is just that financing piece of it. So any follow-up questions on that, or does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But when you said the proof, I remember you guys speak about proof of wages. That is especially for I believe a property that you are going to be occupying. That's something that you have to have 2 months in advance.
So that's actually something I was going to clarify. There's a couple rules changes with owner-occupant houses versus investment properties. So like that gift that Austin mentioned, that can only be done on an owner-occupant. Now,
yes.
as far as the cash reserves, yeah, I believe, and I'm trying to remember right, but it should be 2 months for an owner-occupied property. Is that conflicting with anything you know of it?
So that's where you'll want to check with your individual lender. But I believe if like that 2 months would be for other properties you owned. So if you had like a bunch of other properties, then you would need to show 2 months of reserve for those other ones. In terms of the wages, so what you were talking about of like the income, they're going to go off of the last 2 years of tax returns. So that's how they do it. But mitigating circumstances. If you were graduating college and you're getting your first job, well, you're not going to have 2 years of tax returns to show that. But they understand that you're ending your education, you're starting that, so they'll take kind of what you just said, your last 2 pay stubs for that. Does that answer your question?
So I think just as far as the cash reserves part, if it's not, I'm pretty sure there's some still required for like Austin said, definitely go to your lender and ask them what their requirements are, because they could occasionally differ, but generally, yeah. Now keep in mind, if you're co-signing, I believe your co-signer's cash reserves counts.
Yeah.
So if you're co-signing with your parents, then you're going to have it. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, how would you suggest going about finding tenants in areas like this, especially in our position?
All right. So I actually have a favorite way of mine personally. I personally like Facebook. That's pretty my best source. And that's going to sound weird, but the Facebook Marketplace. Keep in mind, you're probably going to be tempted to want to build a fake profile, so maybe to use that, but you actually can't. You have to use your real profile. If you build a fake one, you don't have access to the Facebook Marketplace until you have like a certain amount of friends. You've been on it for a certain amount of time. But you will be exposed a little bit. So if you're going to use Facebook, you can just use the privacy settings to make it where people don't, see your whole life and everything. But I love Facebook for a number of different reasons. One, it's a huge high volume of people. Two, you can actually look into their lives because most people are not setting the privacy settings. So you can just kind of really get more information than you traditionally would. It's obviously you're going to be living there, right? So you want to really make sure you get along with the people you're about to move into this house. You can't do that on Craigslist. Can't do that on Zillow. You have to actually have a conversation with them and all that. So, and then, as far as, Facebook, the volume has been the most from my experience. You can go to Craigslist, can go use Zillow. Zillow, you'll have to list that it's a room rental, in which case Zillow is going to do this thing where it's going to say, we're not going to list your listing, but we'll put it on Hot Pads and Trulia instead. That's fine. Just let it do that. You'll still get people from Hot Pads and Trulia. Zillow will just kind of push it to those markets. But those are my personal favorite ways. And honestly, I find so many on Facebook, I sometimes don't even need to use the others. But you have any other thoughts?
Well, I would just say for you guys, alternatively, you're in a interesting position where coming into freshman year, there's going to be a lot of, you're actually going to be, the people that could be your tenants are going to be the people you're around every day. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll set up a class of, what would you guys be, class of 20 and 25, Facebook page or something like that. And people are going to be posting that constantly of hey, need a room, need a roommate, need whatever. And so if you get on there and you're vigilant, it should be super easy. I'll give you an example. My little brother goes to the University of Maryland, and he was having the hardest time finding a place. And I was like, well, check out a room rental or something like that. And I was like, I don't know any. But if somebody was on Facebook and posting on that Facebook group, and he would have seen that, then he would have just hopped right on that. So I think that's going to be unique to you all. What Devin was saying is a fantastic option, once you kind of get down the line, but unique to you all is you're going to be in a place where there's going to be thousands of freshmen coming in. Only a certain number of them want to live on campus or can live on campus. And so I think that's going to be your hottest place to find people, is in those groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it should get easier for you as time goes. Your sophomore year, you should know people, right? And then junior year, it's wow, you've got more people that want to live in your house than you have space for, kind of thing. So that would be an ideal scenario for you.
So on Facebook specifically, do you is there someone puts up, I'm looking to rent a house, or what do you look for?
So on Facebook specifically, currently you would actually say on there, it'll have a category. So it'll say you're listing the whole house, or it's an apartment or whatnot, or for rent for own, for sale. The option to just rent a room, as of this recording here, is only available if you make the listing on your phone. It's a bug, it's a glitch, and it's been that way for the past like year now. So I don't know when it's going to get resolved. So do it on your phone, and then it'll have the option to say room only. That'll allow you to then, it'll change the title to renting a room only, and it'll do that on the Facebook Marketplace. Obviously, if you post it in a group, as Austin was mentioning, well, then you can just kind of say what it exactly is. You can just, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, think about just making it beautiful. Like stage it a little bit, grab some good pictures, give a little bit of info about you, like, hey, I'm a motivated, freshman, excited to get involved in these things. At least on the on like the university group kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're selling yourself as well as you're selling the space and things like that. So, good pictures and stuff like that.
And as for the pictures, I mean, you're going to have multiple rooms available. You might as well just take pictures of your best rooms and your best bathrooms. If you're going to have a main picture, don't use a bedroom unless it's a master bedroom. Use like the kitchen or something that is really unique. In some cases, like I have one house that's on a lake that I manage. Well, I used a picture of the lake, and it stands out from the crowd of what everyone else is doing, which is a picture of a bedroom. So, and usually a small one, it's the exact bedroom. But since you have multiples, you get to kind of use all your best ones. Assuming you're not living in the master bedroom.
Would you just going into this with tenants already before you get the house hack started? Or do people usually have the house hack vacant?
I'm sorry, so, repeat. So you're asking, have I ever started a house hack where there was already people in it?
No, I'm saying, do you have the future tenants lined up? Like you're saying, when I get this house.
Oh, before you even get the house. I only know one person who does it. I don't personally do it.
It would be very challenging to do because most of the time they're going to want to know the location, what the house looks like, things like that. Again, you guys are in a unique place. If you're asking around your high school and you got buddies that want to live with you already, that might be a scenario, But I think most of the time, again, as investors, we're looking at risk. And one of the risks we take is that we might not be able to lease the place. And so you just have to be confident enough that that's not going to be the case for you. So very rarely would you see it where somebody, the only scenario that I know of where that usually happens would be like friends or family that's already living with them, maybe in a rental or something like that, or they're like, hey, when you get a place, like I'll move in with you kind of thing. But it's pretty rare to find that.
In all honesty, you're going to rent that thing so fast in your location that I wouldn't be worried about it. I'd be shocked if you went more than a month without plenty of people already almost in the lease signing phase. I would say more importantly, just make sure you have your leases ready. Make sure you have how you're going to collect the rents ready. Make sure you sound competent with exactly the process, the application process. Where are you getting the credit reports from? Are you accepting bank statements? If they're a waiter, how are you doing that? Are you going to, since they only take tips, since your demographic here, the younger college students are probably going to be used tipping systems or something like that, bank statements. So you just have to be more prepared on that end. If you have all that set, then by the time they're ready to sign, you'll be so fast with this process, you'll have tenants in no time.
And going back to one of your videos where you kind of list out I believe it was 7 different types of house hacking. The 2 that I believe that would apply most in this situation was the single family room rent or the live-in flip. I wanted to know, knowing these areas, what would you suggest would be the easiest to find, and would honestly just probably be the best value, or just would be easiest to find in these areas?
So I guess I'll make a quick mention, and then Austin will probably be more familiar with the actual area itself. But you'll always have the easiest time finding a room rental. And the only reason why is because, obviously most houses are fitted for, having multiple rooms in a house for a family. So hence that's going to be your most common type. Live and flip requires you to have, renovation work to do. Multifamily requires obviously multiple units, so that's more rare. And then you have, that Airbnb style that I also mentioned in their vacation rentals and stuff that requires an entirely separate sort of mother-in-law suite dwelling. So all of those are always going to be more rare. But I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Devin hit it on the head of there's you just look at what is the most built product out there, and it's single family homes. There's not as many multi-units and of single family homes. So you guys have brought up specifically the more live-in flip kind where you're going to do some renovation to it and things like that, and the room rental, which you could do both. Like my first house hack was actually not far from University of Maryland in Riverdale, and that was a live-in flip house hack. You know, it was both. I would say it would be it's already challenging if you're like a normal person that has a job and you know, you have your own, you don't need a cosigner or anything like that, and you've got some cash. It's already a challenging thing to do a live-in flip house hack combo. So I would say in your scenario, it's probably best to find the most rent ready, or you know, you're doing a little bit to it where you have that cash available to put into it. Maybe you're updating the bathroom, or you know, maybe the biggest extent I would say is maybe you're adding a bath, because that in a room rental situation really adds a lot of value to being able to rent it quick and being able to charge more money for it. So that would kind of be the farthest extent I would go to that. And then in the two areas that you all are looking for, you know, you're looking at Towson and at University of Maryland. And so there are some unique things about each of those areas. Around University of Maryland, you've really only got a couple pockets where people are walkable to classes, otherwise they're driving. And the more walkable you get, the easier it's going to be to find tenants, the more you can charge, all of that stuff. So that's kind of like the University of Maryland stuff. Towson's maybe a little bit more, there's a little bit more reasonable price housing around the university, and so you're probably able to find something a little bit easier in Towson than you are in University of Maryland. So that would be like the two big differences. And then the consideration that you're going to want to get into is like how many beds and baths, how big. You know, College Park actually has its own inspection system. So they're going to come in and look at like how many beds do you have, and I believe you can't have over 4 in College Park, maybe 5. Yeah. Towson doesn't necessarily have that. So again, like those are some of the regulations that you know, you want to kind of get familiar with and know. But I would say Towson's probably going to be a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier to find. University of Maryland's going to be a little bit more expensive and harder to find something, you know, strictly walkable. But you know, that's the other consideration is, do I need to be walkable to the school, or is it okay to do a short drive, you know?
And as a quick mention here to anyone viewing this episode here, this applies to all universities for the most part. A lot of the advice we're giving here. So this is, you're hearing it for College Park, Maryland, but most of this can be applied anywhere throughout the country.
Yeah,
in any university town.
And find a good, you know, if you're talking about other universities, find a good agent that knows those areas. You know, feel free to reach out and we can connect you to some if it's outside of our area for sure. But they're going to know the little like idiosyncrasies with that area, like what I just told you about the inspections in College Park, and they're going to know like, hey, this area, you know, students really like to rent in. Like there's one part in College Park that's like very, like students love to rent back there, you know, and then there's some other parts where it's like, yeah, they'll rent there, but they'll need to drive to class and, you know, then get a parking permit and things like that, and it makes it a little bit less sense.
And so we're kind of entering this journey investing as partners. And I mean, I know, just kind of speaking with my brother, he always kind of said that like 2 incomes or like just 2 people, 2 brains is kind of better than 1. So in terms of like entering this together, would you say, would you think that our first step should be this house hack in like separately? Because I mean, obviously to do a house hack, we'd be living separately, it would be separate house hacks. Or would you say there's a step that may come before that where we enter and try a different type of investment property or anything of that sort? Or what would you say, like in terms of like having a partner to do this, like what would be the best step for us going forward?
So you're talking about you're trying to consider whether or not you want to partner with your brother. I'm sorry, you said your brother.
Oh no,
Devin
together. Okay,
yeah.
so you both basically partnering on the same house. So only one of you would have the house in your name, and then you would both live in it and manage it. But then, I mean, like how exactly were you thinking that would work?
Well, we're more just trying to figure out because I mean, I know for like our end goal is definitely to live in college for free. So to have separate house hacks. So we know that's a thing that's going to come, but we want to know, as in just taking our first steps in investing, should there be maybe an investment property that we join in on first, or should our first look should be this house hack separately, obviously?
I think so. This is actually something me and Devin have talked a lot about, is house hacking with partners is challenging. And the reason it's challenging is a couple different things. One, and I'll give you a suggestion as to how you might be able to do that, because you guys are, like working together as basically a risk mitigating kind of thing. But I'll just use an example and walk you through what would happen. And so first off, you all are going to need co-signers, as we talked about earlier. So that might be a more difficult conversation to say, like, hey, parents or cousin or brother or whoever, will you co-sign with me and this other person that you may or may not know? And so that would be like kind of one step. Is sometimes it's going to be harder. And then you're going to have 3 people on a loan. So that whole debt, let's say the monthly mortgage is $2,000 a month, that whole debt is going to count against all of you. So it's almost like counting $6,000 of debt against you guys versus just $2,000 or $4,000 if it was just you and a co-signer. So it would not necessarily be the most strategic move for you both to get house hacks, you both to be on title and the loans and all of that stuff. It would just get really challenging. I think what you could do is you could basically say, hey, we're both going to get house hacks. We want to kind of work together on this. So we're going to kind of report the money together. That might be how you would, quote unquote, partner on it. Is that you would be able to kind of just like put the money together. Like, hey, this house is bringing in $3,000 a month. This one's bringing $3,500 a month. This mortgage is $2,000. This one's, $2,200 or whatever it might be, right? And then you put it all in a pot and you split it. But I would actually say it would probably make more sense for you each to take on, and the way that I kind of look at house hacks for my investors is that it's kind of like your thing. Like, I have a lot of partners in different partnerships, and the house hack ends up being like, that's my thing. Like, I have a house hack now that Devin's managing, and like I don't have any partners on it, and it's just like my property, right? That's one of the few things that is just me and not with partners. And so that's how I kind of view the house hack. And if you were considering that versus another type of investment, again, you're going to be running into a lot of the same issues with like co-signers and stuff like that. And it's a much easier conversation, in my opinion. And maybe you have some different resources or something like that. But it's a much easier conversation to say, hey, mom and dad, or hey, whoever, will you co-sign on this house because it's going to reduce my cost of living at college, versus, hey, will you guys sign on this, single family home or multifamily in Baltimore or something like that. Ends up being a lot easier of a conversation. But what you could do is then you're starting to think about, okay, now we've got house hacks and we're building here. You might actually, figure out a way to do some part-time work or something like that to get some tax returns going. And then maybe junior year or senior year, you've saved up enough again that then you're going to partner and buy something else together. Like, that would probably be, if you were to say like, what would be the best way to go? I would say something like that, and or getting ready so that as soon as you graduate and you have that job or whatever it is, you know what you're doing. But that would be what I would say. I don't know if you have any other opinions.
No, I mean,
about
the partnership in house hacks is not something I actually have experience in, like trying to merge with somebody. But one thing I will add on to what Austin said, because I pretty much agree with everything he said here, because I'm like, it's really tricky with those. But you mentioned that you also wanted to start this as the beginning of your investment career, which I'm assuming means that you want to keep the house after you move out of it and make it the first house of your portfolio. So this means you have to look at the houses that you buy very differently than a typical person who wants a house hack. Because most people just want to subsidize their rent. And that's it. Once they move out, they're going to sell it. In fact, I believe Austin may have done that with his first house hack. And that's not a bad strategy at all. But if you're trying to keep it, then you want to make sure the house is in a design and layout that's not it's better suited for like dorm style house hacking, where like, there's a lot of separation between the different rooms. A lot of the rooms are bigger. You don't have maybe like those brother sister style bedrooms where like they're hugged up against each other, separated by one sheet of drywall, and that's it. So you want to make sure the property it works when you leave it. So that way when you manage it, it's like it's not too much of a burden, and it's not like you have constant turnovers because this one particular room is terrible. Same with almost everything else you do in the kitchen. I talk about it a lot in my channels and my videos, but these are things, just make sure you're always thinking about it as an investment property. And even possibly, this is often not possible because the loan, you're over leveraged, but could it possibly be rented to a family once you leave? And that's a thought. Like I said, that's a lot harder because generally if you're using a primary residency loan, you're trying to put 3% or nothing down. So your mortgage is really high, but But that's just what one last piece is. Just don't just buy any family home that you see. So I think we have probably time for one more question before we have to wrap everything up. So go ahead.
Okay. I was gonna ask. So we were planning on moving out the house hack and then, you know, renting it out to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a thing, the 1031 tax code, right? So we just want to get a good understanding of how that affects, you know, money, how money going in from that house goes into another house, and how profit works in a situation like that.
So a little bit different because this is your primary residence. So the 1031 wouldn't come into play. Instead, you're going to get a capital gain exemption tax. But just to give you an overview, that is only on the profit that you make. So again, you're likely, if I'm understanding the scenario right, you're going to live in it for 4 years, and then it only happens when you sell it. So if you're going to, at the end of that, you wouldn't have the 1031 exchange, you would have up to a $250,000 capital gains exemption tax. And so if you were to make $100,000 on it, you sell it, you get all that tax free. And that's essentially what the 1031 exchange would be, is if it was a strict investment property, then rather than that $100,000 being tax free, you would have to pay capital gains tax on it, which it will change in the next 4 years likely. So we can't necessarily take today as an example, but if we did use today as an example, it would be, I believe, 15%. And then at some point in the future, so then the way the 1031 would exchange would work is you would sell it, you would have $100,000, rather than paying $15,000 in capital gains taxes, you would roll it over into a like investment. And then that you would keep that whole $100,000, although later down the road you're going to have to pay that $15,000. So that's like generally how it would work. Again, we're not accountants or lawyers, so take it for what it is. That's just my understanding of it. But more so, you would be looking at a capital gains exemption tax because it's a property you're living in. It's your primary residence, so it would count as that. So you're not even going to be dealing with tax stuff if you were to sell it on that year 4.
If you need some refreshers on this concept, because I understand it's probably a lot of information that Austin just threw at you, just look up some of the advantages of a live and flip and why people use a live and flip for 2 years. Why do they live in the house, renovate it, and then they wait 2 years? That's that capital gains exemption that Austin was talking about. That is, whenever you see stuff about that applies to you, since you're not flipping it, but you're living in it for 4 years, so you get that.
Yeah. So yeah, it was great chatting with you guys. Happy to have a follow-up conversation. You guys got my email, so we can chat on that a little bit more. But pretty cool. 2 kids going into college that are looking to purchase a house. That'll be cool.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for this. Really helped. Thank you for Devin, just your videos in general. Just really helpful in just process. So thank you.
All right.
You're welcome,
guys. We'll follow up real soon. Talk to you all soon.
That's it.